Here we go with Chapter 4 of Fast Facts Geography. Chapter 4, Water. Oceans. Oceans are cool because you can swim and surf and boogie board and collect seashells and buy cotton candy and go on rides. One summer, my family rented a beach house and we went to the boardwalk and I ate so much candy and popcorn and saltwater taffy that I got sick to my stomach. It was the greatest day in my life. Arlo, eating junk food has nothing to do with the ocean. That's an important fast fact to know is that water covers more than 2/3 of our planet. I knew that. But did you know this? The reason why there are tides in the ocean is because of the moon. Isn't that weird? Why should the moon have anything to do with tides? Well, I'll tell you. Just like we have gravity on Earth, the moon has gravity too. And when the moon is overhead, the water in our ocean is pulled towards it, and the water on the Earth is attracted by the moon's gravity. So the water level in the moon rises and falls every 12 hours. Your parents are probably going to tell you that there are 4 oceans, the Atlantic, the Pacific, the Indian, and the Arctic, but they are wrong. A few years ago, the International Hydrographic Organization, which is a fancy word for people in charge of the oceans, decided that there really are 5 oceans. The 5th ocean is called the Southern Ocean. It includes the waters around Antarctica. Some people call it the Antarctica Ocean, just to make sure things even more confusing. Actually, there's just one really big ocean. If you look at the globe, you'll see that all the oceans are connected in one way or another. Those bits of lands we call continents just get in the way. How deep are the oceans? On average, they're about 12,000 feet deep. That might not be much to you, but 1 mile is 5,280 feet. So the oceans are more than 2 miles deep. That's deep. Of course, some parts of the ocean are much deeper than some are shallow. If there weren't shallow parts, you couldn't stand up in the ocean and dig your toes into the sandy bottom. The lowest point on Earth is the valley in the Pacific Ocean's Mariana Trench called Challenger Deep. It's 36,000 feet deep. It's almost 7 miles. Just to give you an idea how big that is, if you picked up Mount Everest and you dunked it into the Challenger Deep, its peak would still be more than a mile underwater. Of course, the tough part would be picking up Mount Everest in the first place. The Pacific is the biggest of all the oceans by far. It covers almost 1/3 of the Earth's surface. It's 15 times bigger than the United States, and it has tons of islands, 20,000 to 30,000 of them. Nobody really knows how many exact number for sure. Some of them are tiny volcanic islands where nothing can grow, so no people live there. It would be cool to live at an island with no people. But then, of course, if you lived there, it wouldn't be an island with no people anymore. The Atlantic Ocean isn't nearly as big as the Pacific, but it's getting bigger because the tectonic plates in the Earth are constantly moving. They're pushing the continents apart. The Atlantic is expanding at the rate of about 1 inch every year. At some point, it would take longer to fly from the United States to Europe. It might be a few million years, but my dad told me that you can save a lot of money by booking flights in advance. Here's another way to ask your parents, what is the longest mountain range on Earth? Give up. It's the Mid-Atlantic Range. It's an underwater mountain chain that runs down the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. The Mid-Atlantic Range is 10,000 miles long. It stretches all the way from the Arctic tip to the southern tip of Africa. That's one mountain range that you probably don't want to ski down. It'd be really hard to ski underwater. Of course, you could ski above it. The Gulf Stream is sort of like a giant river that flows through the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. It's warmer than the rest of the ocean, and it moves from Florida to the East Coast and then all the way across the ocean to Europe. With the Gulf Stream, northern Europe would be a lot colder than it is. You'll never believe who mapped out and named the Gulf Stream. It was Benjamin Franklin. Lakes. Lakes are different from the oceans, and not just because they're smaller. A lake is a body of water that's completely surrounded by land. Every continent has lakes, even Antarctica. Do you like swimming in lakes? If so, you should go to Finland. It has more than 185,000 of them. That's a lot of lakes. There have been lakes that were formed when a bunch of guys with bulldozers dug big holes in the ground, but mostly the lakes on our planet were formed naturally. So you may have noticed that most of North America's lakes in the northern part of the continent. Like there are a zillion lakes in Canada. About 22,000 years ago, during the last ice age, glaciers from Canada started to slip and slide their way south. The moving ice cut into the ground, creating valleys and carrying rock away. When the glaciers started to melt, they turned the lakes into lakes and rivers, and that's how America's Great Lakes were formed. Can you name all 5 of the Great Lakes? I hope so. Most people can't. Here's a little trick. Think of the word homes. Each letter starts with one of the Great Lakes: Huron, Ontario, Michigan, Erie, Superior. You could also use the word Shemo, Meos, or show me. Most lakes have fresh water, the kind that most plants, animals, and humans need to live. If all of the water on Earth, only 2.5% is fresh water, and most of that is frozen or deep underground. That means we only use 1% of the Earth's water. That's kind of scary when you think about all the things we do for water. We drink it, we clean ourselves with it, we water our lawns and wash our cars with it, we fill water balloons with it. Do you and your friends ever have water balloon jousts? Water balloon jousting is the coolest sport ever, especially when you joust on bikes. One time, we were having a water balloon joust on a grassy field next to our schools. My friend Alexia and I were knights, and we got on our bikes in opposite directions on the field. Arlo, you're getting off topic again. The point is that we don't have a lot of fresh water. If you could just pull all the Earth's water into a 1-gallon jug, the fresh water available to humans would be just about a tablespoon. Thank you, little Miss Know-It-All. But here's something you don't know. Lakes are a lot like pretzels. You can get to them with or without salt. The Dead Sea sits on the border of Israel and Jordan. It's not dead, and it's not a sea. So I don't know why they call it the Dead Sea. It's a lake. It's almost 6 times saltier than the ocean. You don't want to drink the water because it tastes yucky. Like most lakes, the Dead Sea is fed by rivers and streams and comes down from the mountains around it. Those waters carry mineral salts, but there aren't any rivers or streams moving water out of the Dead Sea. The only water leaving is by evaporation, and in a hot, sunny climate, it evaporates like crazy. And do you know what the water leaves behind when it evaporates? Salt, of course. That's why it's so salty. The coolest thing about the Dead Sea is that you can float in it even if you don't know how to swim. You get drowned from it if you're tired. Couldn't drown if you tried. It even is hard to keep your legs on the bottom because they keep wanting to float to the surface. There's another salt lake right here in America. It's called the Great Salt Lake, which is the perfect name. It's in Utah. Rivers. Do you know why the Nile is the longest river in the world? Because it goes for miles and miles and miles. That's the oldest joke in the book. They probably told it in ancient Egypt. Gee, if you don't believe me, you're in denial. Or you're in the Nile. One or the other. Get it? Are you quite finished with your little jokes, Arlo? People need to know that the Nile is 4,241 miles and it runs all through Northeast Africa. It starts as 2 rivers, one in the mountains in East Africa and one in the tropics of Central Africa, and it flows into the Mediterranean Sea. It is one of the greatest civilizations in the world. Ancient Egypt came to life on the banks of the Nile. Even today, more than 9 out of 10 Egyptians live within a few miles of the river. The Amazon River in South America flows from the mountains of Peru through the rainforests of Brazil. It isn't as long as the Nile, but it's so wide that some places it looks like a large lake. The Amazon carries more water than the world's next 10 biggest rivers combined. Every second it empties into 57 million gallons into the Atlantic Ocean. Quick, what's the longest river in the United States? Nope, it's not the Mississippi. Nice try. The longest river in the United States is the Missouri. which is 2,540 miles long. That's about 200 miles longer than the Mississippi. Chapter 5 is next. Mountains, deserts, and forests.